Did you know formaldehyde can enter a home through products like engineered wood, furniture, computers, carpeting, treated fabrics, hairsprays, and cleaning materials? These potentially harmful VOCs can circulate throughout indoor living spaces and affect the air you breathe. According to the EPA, poor indoor air quality has been linked to headaches, fatigue, allergies, asthma, and more. The good news is you can ensure your client's air is clean with Certainteed Air Renew drywall. Air Renew Indoor Air Quality Drywall is the first of its kind, patent-pending drywall that actively cleans the air by permanently removing formaldehyde. When airborne formaldehyde comes in contact with the board through normal air circulation, Air Renew drywall captures the formaldehyde and converts it into a safe, inert compound, keeping it safely within the drywall. Air Renew drywall cuts, installs, and finishes just like regular drywall and comes in Type X, moisture, and mold resistant for multiple solutions. The board looks, installs, and finishes just like standard drywall. It also is available in MT2 Tech moisture and mold resistant and Type X, so it can help fit multiple. Indoor air performance tests prove that Air Renew permanently removes formaldehyde. It has been validated by their ULE through their Environmental Claims Validations program. It works with most water-based acrylic and epoxy-based paints. Go ahead and check out Certainteed Saint-Gobain Air Renew VOC Eating Drywall today.
All right, well, I want to welcome everybody to Protecting Wood in the 21st Century, what builders, architects, even designers need to know. This course is approved for 1 hour in continuing education units, GBCI, AIBD, certified green professionals, NARI green, and may be applicable to your local state-based or design contractor license, as well as applicable to the AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety, otherwise known as HSW. I'll be your moderator today. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the Executive Director here at the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute does have a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. And today we're really going to be talking about less toxic, more sustainable ways to protect wood in the future. Very excited. I think, you know, as we start to see the benefits of wood through carbon capture, through more bio-based, through more sustainable material, through less cost than you know, shipping alternatives to wood, to the environmental impact of the alternatives to wood. We're starting to see more and more wood high-rises and other types of buildings that, believe it or not, are actually less prone to moisture, thermal transfer, and to fire, believe it or not. And so this is just real important that we get this portion right. And so that's why I'm, you know, super excited to have Robert Seaman here, who's a third-generation lumber executive from Thunder Bay, Canada, and his grandfather, Bert Seaman, began Great West Timber Bay Wood Forest Products and numerous other sawmilling and treatment companies as far back as the 1940s. His father, Tim Seaman, built the world's most advanced wood pressure treatment facility in Shelburne, Ontario in 1984. And Robert started NextGen, originally called New Wood Technologies, in 2003, who led a team to develop the most effective system for protecting wood, which is called the NextGen. Now, with a head office in Vancouver, Canada, the center of the lumber universe, NextGen has satellite offices in Sydney, Shanghai, New York, and London. NextGen has provided or is providing coating material for the Sydney Opera House, the Panama Canal Expansion Project, and many other large and small-scale developments around the world. So I'm real excited and honored to have Robert here joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you can hear me. It's a great honor to be speaking with all of you, and as Brett said, if you have questions, please feel free to shout them out during this presentation. Hopefully it'll be interactive. If we don't catch your attention right away, as soon as there's a break in the dialogue, just go ahead and shout it out. But basically, a lot has changed really in the last 15 years or so in regards to how wood is protected and how that wood is being used in the overall construction systems in North America. And that's what we're going to focus on here is North America. We are working on a global scale but I think that it's more pertinent to really focus on what we're doing over here, because the technologies have really developed through North American systems in the last 15 years. The changes have been initiated by a lot of the things that have happened over here. But let's go back to the beginning. And wood has been treated and protected from moisture, from insects for thousands of years. In North America, the first really documented use of any kind of a preserved wood was back in the early 1700s. So right around the time of the Industrial Revolution, people started to look at wood as well. So it wasn't just about machinery, it was about all aspects of life, obviously, with the Industrial Revolution, and wood wasn't left behind. And back in 1716, a Dr. William Crook patented what he called the oil or spirit of tar system for protecting wood. And this was very rudimentary. It was simply a topical coating. And up to that point in time, actually up until a little while after that, all coatings for wood, all protection for wood, were topical. So that's one of the interesting things. It's kind of like we've come full circle, and of course we'll get to topicals in a little bit. But let's go through the process of how these things changed. So really, there were different coatings that were being used and experimented with during the Industrial Revolution. As early as the 1700s, mid-1700s, you had people who were working with mercuric chlorides, copper sulfates, and a number of other materials to see what would work best in the preservation of wood. By the 1800s, zinc chloride was really the recommended chemical in the industry for wood protection. Okay, respond here. There we go. So the first real leap forward with wood protection was the idea of pressure treatment. And in 1838, John Bethel created what was called the Bethel Process. And anybody who's familiar with pressure treatment knows this system, the Bethel system. And what it is it's a large cylinder that you put wood into. There's a vacuum process to open the cells and remove debris, after which there is a pressurized segment in which chemical is introduced into the cylinder and forced into the wood substrate. Now, this has been the modus operandi for the treatment industry for 150 years, and really there wasn't a lot of change in how wood has been protected for 150 years, which is really incredible when you think about the technological advances we've had in every other industry on the planet. To be still doing something the same way they were doing it in the early 1800s, seems to be a little bit unusual in today's day and age. Now, the systems have basically stayed the same, but of course there have been many changes in the chemistry involved with protecting the wood. We have gone through all kinds of alternatives over the years, and I'm not going to get into all of them because there simply are just far too many. But these technological advances were done all over the planet. In the United States, Germany, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, these were really the areas that were at the forefront of, going through and testing through laboratory methods what systems, what chemicals would work best in preserving the wood. But what's very interesting is that the biggest change, or perhaps the biggest development for the protection of wood, came from India, from a Dr. Santi Kamasam. And he's the doctor who created CCA. Now, CCA, for a very, very, very long time, was the product for protecting wood. When used properly, CCA worked extremely well in protecting wood substrates. And it wasn't until probably about the 1970s when people started to become concerned with the chemical makeup of CCA and its effect on the environment and its effect on wildlife and, of course, human connections as well. So while it was the leading product and probably about 90% of the world's pressure-treated lumber was CCA, obviously things changed as people became more aware of potential issues. Now, going back to the origins of the protection of wood, first, of course, there were the ships that were sailing. There were wooden ships, and of course, you had to protect those from moisture, so those were protected. But when it came to actual construction, really the main spur for innovation was the establishment of the railroad system across North Europe. They needed to protect the railway ties, which were typically made of wood. And they needed to prevent them from being damaged by insects and rot, because obviously if you have major issues with the rail system, there could be major disruption to the transport within that country or that area, and of course even lives could be lost if there was a passenger train to go through an area that was affected by those things, and there was a structural integrity issue based on the failure of the wood. Of course, over the years, pressure-treated lumber has vastly expanded its market presence into a number of different verticals. And of course, everybody's familiar with pressure-treated decks, pressure-treated fence material, garden plots, you name it. And pressure-treated lumber, as it stands today, accounts for approximately 4% of the wood used in construction. Now, despite the demand for preserved wood products, in the previous slide you saw some areas where it is typically used, and you know, the most common usage of pressure-treated lumber. But there was something in that slide that was very much missing. What about the house? People don't pressure treat lumber for wood frame construction. Typically, unless a building code is very strict, you will not find a home that has been protected from the things that you're protecting your decking material from, for example. And basically, it's the idea of out of sight, out of mind. When a home is built, it's closed up. You don't see the wood studs, you don't see the panels, you don't see any of that stuff. And you assume that because it's covered up, it's fine. But obviously, it's not the case. As we all know, the mold issues that have arisen in North America over the last 20 years have been incredible. The lawsuits are in the billions of dollars annually. Builders are fighting that as best they can, but it's a system where you're locking in moisture into these compartmentalized units, and it's just a laboratory, if you will, in a lot of cases for mold to develop. Of course, wood structures are also prone to other issues. But the reason we haven't pressure treated those framing materials in the past is simply because, number one, it's much more expensive than using untreated lumber. If the building code doesn't demand it, obviously builders don't want to have to include that with the cost of building a home. And it's also very expensive and it's very heavy material. The building weight goes up dramatically when you start pressure treating materials and using them in that kind of a system. Now, additionally, you have homeowners' concerns about using toxic chemicals or dangerous chemicals so close to where their family, spends a great deal of their time. You've got your children, you've got your pets. You don't want to have dangerous chemicals right there next to you 24/7, or if you're in your home 15 hours a day, you don't want to be that close to them. You don't want to be, potentially breathing in gases that are hazardous, and on and on. Architects don't want to use pressure-treated lumber because, again, the massive weight increase to the structure that they're building. And builders don't want to use it because of those things, but also when you dispose of pressure-treated lumber, the waste material, you have to go through a special handling procedure. And it's not as if you can just toss it out with the waste. You have to actually take measures to dispose of the material in a separate fashion, which can increase the cost again to the builder, with obviously negligible benefits for them to be using such material. But we build with wood, particularly in North America, which is why I really wanted to focus on the North American market. Wood construction for homes is our #1 method of building homes. And it's very simple as to why that is. Wood is sustainable, wood is easy to use, everybody's familiar with it, we're comfortable with it. And more now, we have to be thinking about the other benefits that wood has been providing us all these years without us really even focusing on it. For example, wood is 400 times less conductive to heat than steel, and 8.5 times better than concrete is as well. So by making our homes easier to heat and to cool, the energy consumption is lower. It means savings for the homeowner, but on top of that, obviously, it means that we're using less energy, which is better for the overall planet. To manufacture wood-grade, construction-grade wood materials takes 53% less energy than steel and 120% less energy than concrete. And also, concrete is the #3 creator of CO2 on the planet. So the less concrete we're using, the better off everybody is. And of course, one of the major concerns that you hear about when you're using lumber is the fact that it's causing deforestation, that the planet needs as many trees as we can possibly have, for obvious reasons again. But there are more forested areas now in North America than there were 40 years ago. We've done an incredible job. The governments have helped substantially in making sure that clear cutting and other practices that were done previously are no longer the case. Reforestation is an obligation for lumber companies. It's no longer something that they can choose to ignore, and the penalties for not doing so are quite stiff and severe, and we've actually done very, very well in regards to that. So whenever you hear anybody complaining about cutting down trees is hurting the environment, we are doing everything we can to make it better, and I think that those trends are going to continue. Now, we love to use wood, but wood has its challenges, and these are pretty straightforward and obvious. Fire, mold, rot, insects. They all pose a significant challenge to wood construction and wood home ownership or building ownership. Obviously, these are things that you have to constantly be aware of. And today, I think that with the advent of CLTs and glulams and all these other fantastic wood products, we need to be even more so concerned about these things because larger buildings are being built with wood. So we need to be on top of how we can best protect them, and not simply as a reactionary kind of unit, which is what I would consider a sprinkler system, but more preventative, getting right to the core of it and stopping these things before they actually occur. So in the last 20, 30 years, in particular, again, there's been a real shift in wood product manufacturing. There's been a lot of research devoted to creating more robust wood products and addressing the issues that wood could not previously address. Large spans that glulam beams can now take care of, or again, we touched on CLTs, which are cross-laminated timbers, which allow us to construct very tall buildings that are stronger, more flexible, even less likely to burn than a lot of steel structures. And they're, in general, they're safer buildings. But people have that stigma that if they're going to be in a 20-story building and they're on the 20th floor and that's a wood building, they want to know that that every precaution has been taken to safeguard their safety in that building. So while we've been advancing in the manufacture and development of different kinds of wood products, have we been able to keep pace with the protection of that wood? And basically, yes, we have. In the last 20 years, there's been an incredible revolution in topical coatings in particular. So one of the interesting dynamics of all this was that at a time when CCA was running into trouble, it just happened to be at in the early stages of the development of different topical coatings. And we'll talk about a few of those as we go through this. But it's just, it's very interesting that once CCA was basically phased out from any kind of residential use, if you will, it was offset by this development. Now, obviously, there was a little bit of urgency put into topical coatings at the same time, but what was interesting to also watch develop was, rather than look to alternative forms of treatment, the pressure treatment companies looked to different chemicals. So you didn't see this innovation being spurred on by those companies who were directly affected by CCA, and I can speak to this personally because at that point in time, we had our family business, which was a pressure treatment company. So like everybody else, we were waiting to see what the pressure treatment companies came up with to help our family keep its business, keep its business model, not change that, rather than looking to alternative forms of technology where we could be at the forefront of wood protection rather than just trying to keep pace with all the changes that were happening. One of the other reasons for the development of topical coatings was people were looking at this huge amount of construction material that was completely untreated. So you would look at a home and you would see that all of the stick frame material, all the dimensional wood, all of the panels, those weren't being treated. The decking material was, even the fencing material was, even your garden plots were being protected. But this building where you are going to be living with your family, this was not protected. And a number of very large fires also occurred in North America, which again spurred on this kind of innovation. And so it's been a kind of hand-in-glove effort between both the opportunity, which is a majority of the wood that's not being treated is being used in wood construction, and at the same time building codes are being changed to reflect a different world, a world where climate change is an issue, where we have very dry, tindery kind of environments in the southern U.S. in particular. And if there's anybody in this presentation from Los Angeles, I don't need to tell you about the devastation of wildfires and the things that are happening down there. And we hope that all the people down there are okay. Fire is not something that is singular to any one area, though. We've had huge fires in Edmonton. We've had huge fires in, different areas of Canada, which is obviously a very different kind of environment. And fire doesn't pick favorites. It's something that's pretty common everywhere. Building codes have been changing to reflect that, because in North America we build with so much wood. We need to have protection for the homes, and it's not just the home that potentially could burn down, it's the neighboring buildings as well. So we've seen a lot of that happening, and again, this has really worked very closely with the idea of innovating the industry and coating that material. Another change is, again, because of the environmental thought in North America. You are now looking for products that are green, that are sustainable, that are eco-friendly. Those are the key things that people want to be associated with. Homeowners want to know that their family is safe because you're using non-toxic chemicals. Builders want to know that you're using non-toxic chemicals because their workers are going to be directly affected because they're going to be using that material. They're going to be cutting it. They're going to be breathing in the sawdust. They're going to be, touching it and doing all kinds of work with it. They need to be sure that that building is safe. For architects and developers, again, to be able to present a building, a plan, as something that is as eco-friendly as possible, it has an impact on the business. So Topical Coatings started to develop to fill all of these gaps that were opening up in the industry. And the first ones were intumescent coatings. And for anybody who's not familiar with an intumescent coating is typically a layered coating. So it's multiple coatings going onto the face of wood. And when a heat source approaches that coating, it puffs up. Typically it'll puff up 2 to 3 inches, and it'll create quite a wide barrier between the flame and the wood that it's protecting. And intumescent coatings can be very good at slowing down the spread of flame for 10 to 20 minutes. And one of the real keys for intumescent coatings was their success in working with OSB. So oriented strand board cannot be pressure treated. If you try to pressure treat OSB, you basically get a retort full of mush at the end of the process. It just can't be done. So for years and years and years, OSB was a very difficult product to protect from fire. And intumescents, one of the great things that they did was protecting that particular product from fire. And again, these products can be manufactured in an eco-friendly way. But the not so good news. Intumescent coatings do have their issues as well. And first and foremost, with an intumescent coating, the application process can be lengthy and somewhat awkward. So basically you would have to coat a piece of wood, then you would have to put it on a drying rack, let that cure, and then put on a second coat and a third coat if necessary, until you achieve a certain thickness and reach the thickness that you need to actually create the fire barrier that you're currently marketing at. So it's a very labor-intense process. The next one is the fact that in the transportation and the installation of the product, you can't damage the surface of the wood. And if you were to, take a chunk of intumescent coating off of the surface, you would basically be rendering the entire piece useless for fire protection. Fire will get into that one area where the intumescent coating was damaged. So that's a huge problem, because very rarely do you see wood being used on a job site or even arriving at a job site without some sort of damage to it. The limitations of intumescent coatings also include the idea of once they achieve their buffer zone, that will be slowly burnt away by the approaching flame. And once that happens, the wood substrate is completely unprotected. So while it does create that barrier and gives a time delay for the wood fire getting into the wood substrate, once it's in there, there's nothing else to protect it. And this is a non-impregnation system. This is a strictly topical coating. There are building codes which mandate that fire protection be impregnated. Now, impregnation simply means that there is penetration into the substrate by a fire retardant chemical product. And that's where, unfortunately, intumescent coatings also fall short. Now, borates. I'm sure most of you are familiar with borates or DOT. Borates have long been considered the absolute best product for protecting wood. And borates, really, they're salts. They're naturally occurring salts. And they do work extraordinarily well in protecting wood from fire, from insects, even from mold. And it's just been the perfect system, but with one major caveat. Borates leach. Even if you pressure treat borates into the very core of a wood product, they will leach out. They love to follow water, which is a good thing at first, but unfortunately, you know, just general humidity will continually sap this out of the wood. So eventually, over a period of time, which of course will vary based on the environment, eventually that wood that you have even pressure treated with borates will become completely vulnerable to those things that you were using the borates to protect it from. So the question came up, and a scientist in New York State looked at this question and figured out, well, what if you could seal them into the wood? That's actually the basis for our particular product, is we can use a borate base, but we don't have to. But what our product does is, as a topical coating, it goes on in a single process, one spray and you're done. And the salts and the other dry ingredients that we include as part of our product actually penetrate into the wood substrate, so you get the impregnation factor. But then our sealant, what we call our micro barrier, actually bonds with the wood at a cellular level, and it locks all of those dry ingredients inside the wood substrate, so you get that protection, and it's long lasting. So you basically, we completely took the leaching issue out of the equation here. And the building that you see there on the right in this frame, it's the EU's tallest wood-clad building. It's 30 meters. It's in Middlesbrough in the UK. And all of the exterior wood that you see there was protected using NextGen. And it's been there for approximately 8 years, I believe, without any negative effect happening to that particular building.
What's the size on that for us U.S. folks who refuse to use the meters?
It's about a 10-story building.
Thanks.
No worries. So our product has gone through an incredible amount of testing. Obviously, whenever you're dealing with anything that you're making these types of claims on, the anti-fire, anti-mold, anti-rot, anti-insect, it goes through an incredible amount of testing. We are UL and ULC rated, and we are the only product, wood protective product that we know of that has third-party warranties through Lloyd's of London, and this is for fire. If a building were to burn down, we have a $10 million per incident insurance policy that protects us, protects the homeowner, protects the builder, protects the architect, protects everybody in the process. It's also warranted to prevent mold, insects, and rot. And we've never had a claim against our warranty. We've had our fire warranty for coming on 6 years, our mold, etc., insurance for 11 years, and we've never had a claim. And I'm not saying a rejected claim, but we've never had any kind of claim whatsoever made against the failure of our products. And of course, there's the Sydney Opera House, which, as Brett mentioned in the onset, we are providing all of the fire retardant coatings for the renovation of that project, of that building in Australia, which is ongoing right now. Right now, there are about a dozen what I would call mainstream topical coatings that are looking to protect wood from one of its issues. So, for example, you get a product that's looking at mold, or you get a product that's looking to prevent fire. There are very few products that cover multiple areas of potential damage to wood. Our product is one of the only ones that does the four things that we mentioned, which was fire, mold, rot, and insects. Typically, because of building codes now, more and more fire retardants are being used for wood structures, and a lot of it is still pressure-treated material, which is not fun stuff to use. I'm not sure how many of you have come into contact with material that is pressure-treated with fire retardants, but it's very heavy, and the chemicals that they use typically for a pressure treatment process, are very, very toxic. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to position topical coatings into a place where they become a much more interesting option for people to spec into the development of their buildings. When you look at the global market for topical coatings for wood construction, it's estimated to be more than $100 billion for next year. Now, of course, we're not going to achieve that, but that's the target. We want to protect every stick of wood that is being used in construction from all these things that are issues to it, that are challenges for it. And one of the interesting things that we've done as a company is we're working with insurance companies across North America to provide insurance discounts, homeowner insurance discounts to homeowners that use our products in their construction. So what we found is that they've been very receptive to this. They typically like homes that are much less likely to burn down or get all moldy and things like that. So the discounts that homeowners are getting on their insurance is typically offsetting the minimal increased cost for using our material. And just to give you a very ballpark figure as to the cost, you're looking at, if you were to build a 2,000 square foot home, standard stick frame construction, to coat the entire package, wood package that's being used in construction, the homeowner is looking at about a $3,000 increased cost to them. So that's about $15 a month on a 30-year mortgage, and that's the discount that they're getting to offset that increased cost from the insurance companies. So basically, the homeowners can get it for free. And yet, everybody in the, if you will, the food chain who is working with us is going to make margins of at least 20% or more. Now, this is something that we always come up against in our industry, and that is, if I told you that I had an eco-friendly, non-toxic product that you could spray onto a piece of wood one time, and it would have 50 years of protection for fire, mold, rot, and insects, and UL rated, ULC rated, all those kinds of good things, most people say, well, it just sounds too good to be true. Well, we have tested and retested our products, as have all the topical coatings companies. So whenever you're dealing with a topical coating company, ask them for the data. We are always happy to provide data to whoever needs it. And we've worked with Trada in Europe. We've worked with Louisiana State University very, very closely in the development of the product, both for fire testing and also for insect efficacy. We worked with Alberta Innovates Tech Futures, Intertech Laboratories, Real-Time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have put this product through its paces, and in fact, it is due to the amount of testing that our company has done in particular that we were actually able to get our insurance policy for fire, because we were able to provide so much data to the insurance companies, to the brokers, that when they went out there to look for fire insurance for us, we were able to provide that information and get that warranty. So that's our presentation. Hopefully, you have a few questions. This hopefully spurred up some thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you think about the future of coating wood in North America.
Hey, great. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I know we definitely got some time for a lot of questions. I got a few in here already. I know I actually have a lot of questions myself. I want to make sure I get to all of your questions. And before we jump into those questions, just real quick, a big thanks to all of our sponsors, our board of directors, our members, everyone who supports us and allows us to do what we do. For those of you trying to get your continuing ed, make sure to take that survey that pops up, check your spam for email. For those of you who are watching this in the future on demand, complete your 10-question quiz with the 80% passing rate. So, Robert, the first question that came in was very specific to both existing technologies and then sort of future technologies, and differentiating, the difference between what's going on above the foundation and below the foundation. And so would it be fair to just quickly say that for existing stuff, based on what you said, it would be fair to say that that's just, no matter where it's happening, it's just not happening at all. Would that be accurate? As far as pressure treating construction.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely accurate. Yeah, that would, yeah.
So so moving into more of the future and where we want to be going, is there any difference on what you would want to be doing above the slab, versus, basements or underground?
Well, for a basement area, you can use topical coatings as well. That's fine. Even for still plates now, we've tested topical coatings, and they can work extremely well in a still plate environment. So it's really, how long is a piece of string as to what the future will hold. For example, when we first developed this product back in around the year 2000, it was strictly an anti-mold, anti-insect product, and it was only for covered structure. Now, with many years of development and time going into upgrading certain aspects of the product, of course, we have the fire protection, but we also have a product that can be used in an exterior environment. And we have, for our covered structure, we've always had a 50-year warranty, and for exterior application, we've actually got a 30-year warranty. So, topicals are changing. When I first got involved, we never thought that we would actually be using topicals for an exterior application that could, compete against what pressure treatment products were doing. And in fact, what we found is that the efficacy of our products over time appear to be greater than some of the new ACQ treated products on the market.
Great, thanks. What do you mean by fire protection? Does the coating make the wood non-combustible? Is this product treated wood siding considered non-combustible cladding?
Well, the term non-combustible is something that creates a bit of an issue in our industry. Wood technically is never non-combustible. It's just a physical impossibility. That being said, what we've done is we've tested to the highest levels possible for fire retardancy based on ASTM standards in North America. And we have achieved Class A basically across the board for those different tests. So for exterior applications, we have a Class A for material that's been tested on weathered products. So you go through an accelerated weathering test, and then you put the product in for fire testing, and we have a fire rating of 10, which you have to be below a 25 for the ASTM standards, particularly the E2768. So we've done extremely well in developing that side of things. So this is a fire retardant, which is the way it works. When flame approaches our product, the wood chars and will not burn.
Great, thanks. So this is a fantastic question, and I want to add a little bit to it and then sort of tie it back into this whole insurance concept. And well, maybe let me start with the insurance concept just to make sure I got it right. You're saying that with the insurance discount, it should make the increased cost of treating the studs and the lumber a neutral or a wash. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's exactly it. Basically, if you increase your mortgage costs, the amount that it would take to use our product, there will be a discount that you can get through your homeowner insurance company that will offset that. So basically, you're right, making it a wash.
Do you know what the timeline on the return on investment is? Is that just depending on square footage, or what do you see?
Sorry you're kind of breaking up there. I didn't quite hear that.
Oh, I was just saying, I assume, you've got this high upfront cost, so there has to be sort of an ROI. When would that ROI, kind of activate?
Well, what we've basically done is we've said that it's a 30-year mortgage and it's a 50-year policy, insurance policy.
Okay.
But the 30-year mortgage, if it's $3,000 to do your 2,000 square foot home, you're amortizing that out over 30 years.
I see.
With an interest rate.
Okay.
So
now,
that's what we're saying.
Right. So what happens if the lender doesn't see the value in it and says, our appraisers don't understand this, they're not going to bump it up. Could that come into conflict? And we're experiencing the same conflict with energy efficiency, just so you know. So.
Yeah, of course. But there are a number of different lenders out there. So what we would do is, of course, we would make recommendations based on our relationships with the insurance companies to the homeowners. And we can pass that information along directly to the builders and the developers so that way they can get in contact with these people as well and just say, these are the companies that have acknowledged the additional benefits of using these products. Contact them, and then you can get your discounts.
Sure. Definitely a worthwhile pursuit. So kind of on that, so here's a question from Christina. Most occupied building wood wetting problems are from the interior humidity not being confined with an internal continuous air and water vapor barrier that would keep it out of the building envelope. To me, it seems that should be the first step in wood protection. And I kind of want to add to what she's saying. And you know, so you've got the Energy Star program for homes here in the U.S., and it has a water management sort of just keeping water out of the house from the top to the bottom. It's integrated into the LEED program, into our Green Star program, into a lot of other green building programs. And so, you know, I wonder, you know, what's your, number one, your first thought is you focusing more on construction to keep the water out in the first place. And then I guess I have to wonder, you know, wouldn't that be the top priority for the insurance rates over the treated wood?
Well, that's something that you would have to discuss, unfortunately, directly with the insurance companies. It's not something that we've, you know, obviously brought up with them because it's not part of what we do specifically. So I can't really say as to what they would prioritize and what they wouldn't. But what I will say, though, is that even despite these precautions that you put, you're obviously going to have moisture and water in the house. You know, it's just you have piping coming in and you have leaks, you have issues. So one of the things we can do is prevent mold from growing in an environment where you have any kind of a leak within the home, or you know, you have high humidity in a shower unit and things like that. So again, it's not just a mold preventative product as well. So we're looking at insects, we're looking at fire, and these things affect even the most energy efficient home.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that response. So, wow, the questions are really, really piling in. Can the product be applied to, and I'm just going to spell this and maybe you know the answer, but P-A-R-A-L-L-A-M?
Oh, Paralam. Yes, absolutely.
And what is that?
Simple answer.
what is Paralam for those who don't know what it is? Do you know what it is?
Sorry, are you asking?
I'm saying asking you. Maybe you could quick for those who might not know what it is.
Well, you know what? Hang on a second here. I'm going to bring this up for you. Sorry, I want to bring that up. I wanted to. Sorry. Apologize. I guess the best way to describe them would be kind of like OSB kind of put together in a beam situation as opposed to a panel. So you get strands of wood and you form large, bulky timbers out of those. So one of the things that we've had issues with in the past is working with OSB and protecting OSB panels. So what we did was we worked directly with the Alberta Innovates Technology Futures Group, which had the much better name of Alberta Research Council before. I don't know why they changed it to something much more lengthy. But what they did was they use an OSB press. So what we did with them was, rather than adding wax to the panels, to the strands, and then pressing the OSB panels, we worked with them to coat the strands with our material, because even with all the other things that I've mentioned about our product, one of the things I haven't really discussed is the fact that our product is a water barrier. So water will not absorb or be lost from the wood substrate. It will slowly, but very, very slowly over time. So what we did was we coated the individual strands and pressed the boards, and we can do the same exact thing with the Paralam beams. We coat the individual strands as opposed to the overall timber, creating a protection right through the entire piece of wood, the final product.
Great, thanks. And as far as OSB goes, due to the need for penetrations, is there anything that you all can help with there?
Well, again, OSB is a different animal for us. When we first tried doing work with OSB, we tried to do it as a surface coating, and it simply didn't work. And the reason was because of the wax that was being included in the panel to prevent moisture damage. Our product couldn't get to the actual wood substrate. So we would coat it, and we would submit it for testing, and as soon as the wax started to melt, the flame would get in and the panel would just go up like a candle. So that's why we went to Alberta Innovates, and we said, well, listen, because we are a moisture barrier, instead of adding wax, just use our product on the strands and then press the boards. So what you end up having is a piece of OSB that's protected all the way through. Now, one of the surprise benefits, side benefits from producing an OSB panel that didn't have wax but had our coating on top was that it bonded really well with the resins that were being used to create the panels, and you actually had a panel that was about 60% stronger than your traditional OSB panel. But that's kind of how we've had to approach OSB as opposed to a topical coating. While it is a topical coating, it's actually at the strand level as opposed to on the finished product level.
Great, thanks. So we got a couple questions rolling in about application. How is it applied? Where and when is this applied? Is it in the lumber yard, in the field? Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, basically the product can be applied pretty much anywhere now. Even if you have a building that isn't closed in, if you've just got the studs up and some of the panels and things like that, you can actually go in and do what we call a retro spray. Now, when you do a retro spray, you're not going to get to 100% of the material, but it is still actually a valid, warranted way of protecting the home. This is because we've had, after we had 5 years of no claims against our fire warranty, we were given the option of doing this. We had approached the insurance companies early on about doing what we call a retro spray. And really, the thing that we were most interested in doing retro sprays on were, it was a market for us over in Asia with some ancient temples that were being renovated and fixed up. And they wanted to know if they could go in and actually spray these temples with our material. So we had to get special permission from the insurance companies to do that. So we can actually do this now for homes in North America. But traditionally, the way it's done, it can be done at a sawmill, it can be done at a distribution center. We do have coating partners, and all they do is coat material. So the wood gets shipped into their facility, they do the coating, and then they ship it back out either to a DC or to a job site directly.
Great, thanks. Are there any issues with corrosion of fasteners as with ACQ? I'm not sure what that acronym is, but
yeah, ACQ is the new go-to pressure treatment product. No, there are no issues with fasteners. You don't have to use any kind of stainless steel specialized fasteners or anything like that. It's non-corrosive.
I know that borate's getting used in a lot of cellulose, blown-in cellulose. Is this something that could also be applied to cellulose, or have you seen it?
It's not something that we've ever really pursued, but if somebody wants to reach out to me afterwards to discuss this, please feel free to do so.
Mm-hmm. Great. What color is the coating? Does the coating change the look of exposed wood? Also, does the coating provide a bond break to other paint coatings? First, I'll answer the last part there. Yes, it does. And secondly, the first part of the question, our product is perfectly clear. And once it's applied to the wood surface, after it cures, you cannot see, smell, or feel it, which is great and problematic. It's great for exposed beams, like glulam beams and things like that. It's fantastic, and that's one of the reasons why our product is really become the go-to for glulams. But when you're doing dimensional lumber that's being used in a home, obviously the homeowner wants to know that it's protected. So we do add dyes to our product whenever requested, and we can basically color match any color now. It's gotten to be that good for us. So
If you want a red, you can have a red or a blue or specific shade of brown, no problem.
And there's no problem applying a water-based finish afterwards?
That's right, and that's very good that you actually mentioned that. Any surface coating going over top of it does have to be a water-based coating. We can't obviously use oils because, as I said, it is a protective barrier and doesn't allow moisture in, so the oils would be definitely adversely affected by that. But most people don't use oils now anyway.
All right. During the session, you mentioned that concrete was the number 3 creator of carbon dioxide. Now, are you meaning that in general or in the context of the products that could otherwise replace concrete?
No, it's actually the number 3 creator of CO2 on the planet, the manufacturing of concrete.
Great. Wow. Okay. Are there any wood types out there that just inherently and naturally grow these types of resistance within their structure that would not need coating?
Well, there are a number of hardwoods that are, very good for insect prevention and insect damage prevention and things like that. But pretty much most wood products will be susceptible to mold and fire. Those are 2 things that are just pretty much straight across the board uniform.
Okay. Maybe you can real quick, what is the difference between mold and rot? And obviously, I mean, that's fairly obvious, but, if one's occurring, isn't the other one always occurring?
Well, not necessarily. You could have mold on the surface that doesn't necessarily impact the structural integrity of the substrate underneath, at least not for a significant period of time. But when you get a lot of water damage and a lot of water absorption into wood, then it creates mold issues within the actual board itself. And some of the types of mold that you can get, particularly in extremely humid climates, can grow and destabilize the wood very, very quickly.
Well, we've got a little more time for questions if you can stick around, but as we're waiting for those to roll in here, I wanted to share something with everybody. So real quick, this is the first session we've ever done that talked about the chrominated copper arsenate railroad ties. And one thing that I wanted to point out is our Green Star program actually specifically calls this out if you are doing a landscape redevelopment plan, that no new railroad ties or other landscape materials that contain this, so that's like recycled railroad ties, actually be used. So it's pretty cool to see finally somebody mention this because it's been in there for a long time, but to kind of, point out what those issues are. And, we're pretty stringent about, not utilizing those in your projects. And one other thing I wanted to point out, as of this webinar, we are announcing that we are going to be adding in credit within the rating system to allow for non-toxic or less toxic, rather, pressure-treated structural wood within the house or multifamily building itself to add to your materials and your health points. So we will be building that in, and Robert, hopefully we can work with you to get some advice on how to word that. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we are very excited. We see the value in that, and I don't think it's typically called out because it's so unique. But we are going to be adding that in, so I just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely, more than happy to assist any way I can.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see if we've got some new questions here while we're waiting. I think you kind of talked about it, but just to reiterate again, is for treating the home. Do you do the spray from the inside and the outside after wood framing, before MEP, rough-ins, or after, or maybe all the above?
Yeah, basically before the rough-ins, and you would do inside and outside. Yeah, you'd want to get as much of the wood surface coated as you possibly could. So when you think about it, you're going to be able to get probably about 90% of the wood after it's been framed up. As long as it's not roughed in, and you can reach everything, then that's what you would want to target.
Great. Well, we're kind of at our time here. I don't see any other questions. I do see a lot of comments about folks who want to get a hold of you and follow up with some, looks like some real tangible items here to help them out. So where can they find more information and get in touch with you, Robert?
Go to our website, nextgenprotection.com, and you can reach our office. Somebody would be more than happy to help you at 604-248-3920.
Great. Well, Robert, thanks for your time, and thanks to NextGen, and thank you all for joining us here today. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you very much, Brett.
Take care.